participation was. And then we'll get going. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello and welcome to NACD's Conservation Coffee. I am Ariel Rivers, NACD's Director of Membership Engagement, and I'll be hosting this quick chat today. Thank you for joining us to hear from Matt Miller, the Leadership Development Program Manager for I apologize, I'm multitasking here, for the Pennsylvania Association of Conservation Districts. Matt will discuss how PA supports districts with strategic planning and leadership development. Before we get started, just a few quick reminders. Please keep yourself on mute if you can, so that we can make sure we don't have any background noise. This session will be recorded and we'll add it to our YouTube as well for later viewing. So make sure you share that with anyone who may have an interest. After we hear from Matt, we'll also have an opportunity for questions and answers. Please feel free to stick those in the chat and I'll read them out loud for the recording, or of course you can raise your hand and I'll call on people in turn. I'd also like to point out a few people who help created and keep these chats going. They are on our District and Partner Relations Committee. So if you are a member of that committee and you are with us, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat or turn your camera on and wave for the audience so that we can make sure to acknowledge the volunteers that help support these activities and keep NACD going. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Matt. Matt, please feel free to unmute yourself, give yourself a bit of an introduction, and thank you so much for presenting today.
Great. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you for having me today. As Ariel said, my name is Matt Miller. I'm the Leadership Development Program Manager at the Pennsylvania Association of Conservation Districts. I've been in this role since 2018, so it'll be 6 years coming up this spring. Let me just go ahead and there we go. Can everyone see the slides okay? Okay, great. I am someone that spends a lot of time, I book a lot of hours on Zoom, and I can appreciate both being on the sending and receiving end of some folks that just go on and on and on and throw a lot of information at you. I can certainly appreciate the need for efficiency and brevity. So I will try to give as brief of an overview as I can for everyone, but please feel free to stop me and put a question in the chat window if there's anything that I can explain or clarify or circle back to. So I just wanted to start by saying that financial and other support for the Building for Tomorrow Leadership Development Program is provided through a grant from the Pennsylvania State Conservation Commission, and guidance for the program is provided through the Pennsylvania Conservation Partnership's Leadership Development Committee. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the Leadership Development Program, and we're going to drill down specifically on our Strategic Planning Grants Initiative, but I thought it might be helpful to have a little bit of background about the commission itself and the Leadership Development Committee. So the State Conservation Commission, it's an administrative commission, and Ron, help me out, jump in here if I say anything that's not correct. But I think there are 12 or 14 commission members. It's under the concurrent authority of our state departments of agriculture and our Department of Environmental protection, and it's supported by staff from both of those agencies. The purpose of the commission is to provide support and oversight for county-level conservation districts and their implementing of conservation programs on the ground. So the commission—
The number of Americans filing for jobless benefits last—
Sorry? Okay. That's not me, I don't think. Okay, I'm going to go on. We'll just ignore that. As I was saying, the Conservation Commission, the State Commission, does administer a variety of programs, including a nutrient and odor management program, a dirt, gravel, and low-volume roads program, resource enhancement and protection tax credit program, which is fairly popular, various other grant programs. But they also administer what we call the CDFAP, the Conservation District Fund Allocation Program, which is a source of funding that, among other things, offsets salaries for management and technical staff at the districts, but it also includes some training and development pieces, among which is the Building for Tomorrow Leadership Development Program. So this was a program that was originally established in 1986 at the commission, and again, Ron or Brenda might have a little bit more historical insight than I do. It was previously or I should say, at its initial outset, was very director and board development focused. And for the most part, all the content and training was steered by conservation district staff with the assistance of some agency staff. At some point in the early part of this century, that sort of coordination came to live with agency staff through our Department of Environmental Protection, and the commission, or the Leadership Development Committee, I should say, did decide in 2017, I believe, to allocate funding for a full-time coordinator housed at the Pennsylvania Association of Conservation Districts, and that's me. And I arrived in early 2018 and have been um, coordinating these efforts since then. So the program itself really delivers training content and events, as well as consulting services aimed at enhancing leadership and professional development for conservation districts. Our district staff have a variety of resources available for technical training and other specialized training through a variety of resources, including an online learning management system called the Clean Water Academy that our Department of Environmental Protection administers. But what our leadership development content is primarily focused on leadership development and professional development. We do certainly entertain and include some operational topics in our program, but the focus is on that personal leadership and professional development. As I mentioned at the outset, we have a leadership development committee that includes district directors, district management staff, and partner staff. And those partner staff come from the larger Pennsylvania Conservation Partnership, which includes the state commission, as well, which is housed at the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. Of course, our Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, our Department of Conservation of Natural Resources, as well as the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, Penn State University Cooperative Extension, and of course, the association, the Pennsylvania Association of Conservation Districts. That's a little bit of background. Again, as I said, we provide training content. We also provide consulting directly to districts. Our statewide annual training calendar pretty much has a little bit something for everything for all of our audiences. We do a summer joint annual conference with the commission and program some director centric content there. We host an annual management summit conference, which is a 2-day event designed specifically for conservation district managers. We've also expanded that in recent years to include a pre-con day, which is a dedicated day for emerging leaders across the state. These are our new managers, newly hired district managers, first-time managers, assistant managers, team leads, and other management purview staff, as well as really just management aspiring staff. We take retention efforts really seriously, and staff development is a big part of that, as is succession planning. And so we do have, again, a dedicated emerging leaders program that we include in that annual management summit. I also host a fall leadership webinar series that is generally geared towards higher level strategic and operational topics for boards and for district managers. Topics have included things like an in-depth examination of the Pennsylvania Public Officials Ethics Act and ways, things that you need to look out for in terms of avoiding even the appearance of conflict of interest. Certainly a popular topic as of late. We've done things like identifying gaps in insurance coverage, especially for districts that may be separate legal entities from their host counties. And for those of you maybe that don't know, Pennsylvania is kind of a mishmash. We have 66 different districts and a variety of different relationships with their host counties. So insurance coverage, definitely something to keep in mind. We've done other topics like ADA accessibility requirements for website accessibility. Certainly looked at things, other more specialized topics like employment law topics, workplace, sexual harassment, respectful workplaces, those sorts of things. So that's what the Fall Leadership webinar series generally entails. Our winter staff training initiative usually takes place in February and March every year because that's the time of year when there's the least amount going on out in the field. And that takes a variety of formats. We've done statewide staff conferences. We've done virtual conferences. We've done different hybrid deliveries of this content. The past couple of years, we've opted towards a regional workshop model for delivering our staff training in the winter. Things like emotional intelligence, assertive communications, time management, these kind of basic professional development topics. We, again, deliver that in person through regional workshops. We also do webinar series. Oftentimes we combine the two, or we'll do one topic with one delivery format, another topic with another. I also include in this winter staff training initiative every year, we do a Conservation District Video Awards, which is becoming more and more popular. We ask districts that have produced video content over the past year to submit that. We have a panel of judges, that's our PACD and some partner staff, and then we try to have fun with it. We give out a trophy and try to make it like an award show, but really it's about celebrating the hard work of all the folks, all the district staff that produce video content, and of course recognizing excellence. Moving on, we do a regional director training initiative also during the same time frame, February and March. These are generally delivered as regional half-day workshops. This year, we're looking at strategic board development and the director nomination process. Other topics have included policies that support retention goals. I mentioned before, respectful workplaces, intergenerational workplaces, things of that nature. Lastly, we also do a spring leadership webinar series. Unlike the fall series, which is a little higher level and strategic, the spring series is really geared towards orientation audiences, both newly appointed district directors as well as newly hired managers. And we give them orientation topics, some basic fundamentals like Pennsylvania Conservation District law, other laws that are applicable to conservation district management and operation, certainly basics of district financial management, and then some operational basics for new managers, as well as broad overviews of all the different various partner programs that the districts participate in. This can be a lot, can be quite daunting for folks, especially if you're a newly appointed director that maybe doesn't have a deep background in agriculture or conservation. It's a lot to process, and we try to give folks some sort of clear, concise orientation content that gets them what they need to know immediately to be effective directors at their districts. So, in addition to that training calendar, we also do some direct consulting with districts. This takes the form of, some staff-oriented stuff, such as a Clifton Strengths Initiative that we run for districts. We have over, I think, approaching about 330, 340 participants statewide. I believe about 2/3 of our districts, probably about 40 of our districts total, participate in that. And I facilitate team building workshops for single district teams based on that product through the Gallup Corporation. We also do a strategic planning initiative, which I think is what you really came here to hear about. So before I move on, I do see a question in the chat. Let's take a look. Curious about funding source for the training. Yes. Okay. So as I mentioned, we can cover that right now. We are completely funded through the Conservation District Fund, the CDFAP. That is through the State Conservation Commission, and we contract when I say we, I should say PACD, who is my administrative employer, contracts yearly through the Conservation Commission. It is a reimbursement grant, so I essentially deliver the programming that's agreed to by the committee, and then we submit for reimbursement on a quarterly basis. But that is funded completely through the commission. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, this is Terry from
Hi.
Oregon that asks the question. So does the actual funding itself come from the state legislature or a different source?
Yes. Monies that come from, and I'm a little bit out of my depth in terms of tracing all the funding sources, but we get our money from this conservation district fund allocation program. That money actually is, I believe, comes through our unconventional gas well revenue through the state. For the most part, although it may come from other sources. I'm not able to give you a definitive
Thank you.
answer on all the different. Go
Matt,
ahead, Ron.
I can
Yeah,
answer
that's
that.
helpful.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Is
Go ahead, Brenda.
can-
The money from the CDFA, for the CDFAP comes from the annual state budget. We have a line transferring to the Conservation District Fund within DEP, our Environmental Protection Department. And there's also a line at the Department of Agriculture's budget, which is annual. So that's where the money comes from partially. Matt is also correct. There is funding coming from the unconventional gas well allocation that is also on an annual basis. So it's from different sources, but we were very, very fortunate that that money all goes into one fund that is then, there's a formula to distribute all of that funding from the SEC to various sources.
Thank you. That answered
And-
my question.
almost most of that money goes directly to the districts. A very small amount of it goes to administrative and other programs, including leadership development. So. Okay, moving on. Any other questions about the program in general? Our training, events, content, anything?
Matt, this is Ariel. I just wanted to jump in and say I love the video awards, and it looks like in 2022, Ron's district actually won in Westmoreland.
Yeah, totally above board. We have a panel of judges that consists of PACD staff as well as some of our partner staff, and we have them score the video entries across a set of criteria based on production value, messaging, and overall communications effectiveness, for the intended audience. Because we have districts that produce video content for varieties of audiences. Some of, I get videos that are geared towards K-12 education. I have others that are geared towards training the regulated community. Others are simple awareness, building awareness campaigns or community outreach. So we try to give everyone a fair shake and an even playing field. But yes, Westmoreland, something in the water out there. They have some talented staff, some very talented communication staff out there that seemingly have it cornered here with our video contest. So moving forward with our program, as I mentioned, consulting services, our training calendar is statewide or regionally delivered, but it's consistent across the state. Other consulting services that we offer are, based are directly to districts on a district by district basis. For staff, I do training workshops, team building workshops based on Clifton Strengths product through Gallup. For boards, we have a strategic planning initiative. Now, we call this really vernacularly, we call this a strategic planning grants program because most of our activity is simply reimbursement grants. But I'll give you a little bit of background about what we do and maybe answer some questions for there. So this has been going on since 2008. Since 2008, 27 of our 66 districts have participated in the program, some of them multiple times. We do recommend updating a strategic plan every 5 years. So since 2008, we do have a number of repeat customers. We do have a handful of districts throughout the state that have done have current or recent strategic plans, but did not participate in our initiative or in our reimbursement program. And I do track those as well. So we're really looking at about half of the districts, half of our 66 districts across the state do have a current strategic plan in place. And we encourage hopefully more of them to get on board. The plan, administratively is fairly simple. We offer up to $1,500 per district as a reimbursement grant for actual costs associated with the planning process, or an equivalent in planning support services. And that's something that's relatively new that I've developed in the past few years and frankly have not gotten a lot of traction on, but it is an option, especially for some of our smaller districts and some rural areas where their needs for facilitation and support are not significant. And it's important to have an objective person there who understands district operations. But if you're familiar with Pennsylvania, you'll know what I'm talking about. If I say, say Forest County is not equivalent to Allegheny County in terms of population density and in terms of all the different strategic connections that a district and a district's work has. So we look at that on a case-by-case basis, but for the most part, what this looks like is delivery of up to $1,500 to reimburse planning costs. And that can be hiring a facilitator, that can be, supplies or even food or refreshments for planning meetings. That can, there's a variety of things that money can go towards. We do have a few process requirements, and they're very simple and fairly broad-based. The project has to be standalone project. We have some requirements for participation of key stakeholders, both within the district and outside of the district. We do require a dedicated team lead, ideally a board member, as well as consulting and support. In other words, if you are serious about doing strategic planning, we highly recommend that you either hire an outside consultant or you come and talk to me and we figure out what your needs are and how we can meet them directly. Lastly, there is a limit on printing duplication costs. I believe only 20% of our total reimbursement can be applied towards those costs. But that's broad strokes outline of what our process requirements are. We do have some content requirements which are a little more specific, and I'd be happy to go over those briefly for you. Each of our approved plans to be eligible for reimbursement needs to kind of follow a similar format, or at least include consistent content. So that includes the mission statement of the district, a description of how the plan was developed, and a list of participants in that development process. An explanation of how priorities were chosen, and usually this includes a ranked list of your county level resource issues. Where are the specific watersheds that need attention? Where are the specific, if for example, districts that do for instance, mine reclamation projects. We like to see some geographical specificity in those goals. And of course, outcome statements, which are goals for any critical natural resource issue. And again, an indication of what the priorities are and how that order of priority was reached. We also would really like to see an analysis of resource allocation against these outcomes, including an identification of shortfalls. It's very strategic to say that we don't have the money. We want to do this, but we don't have the money right now. That's looking forward in the future, and that's a basis, on which you can develop a plan. But we like to see a little bit of transparency there, as well as identification of areas for continued improvement or areas that would benefit from continued or increased investment. The plan also needs to include a plan for itself for distribution, utilization, and particularly reevaluation. It's not my job to editorialize on what comes across my desk. I go through this checklist, and when a plan comes across my desk, I go down the checklist, make sure that all the boxes are checked, and then that district is eligible for a reimbursement grant. That being said, I've seen some really good plans, and I've seen some that aren't as great. And my personal measure for success that I suggest to boards and managers when embarking on this process is you need to produce a living, breathing, working document, not something that, okay, everyone's happy with this, great, let's sign off on it, it's approved, and let's put it on the shelf and it collects dust for 5 years. That's not what we're interested in doing. That doesn't serve our purposes. We want to see a document that you are referring to regularly, that you are evaluating yourself against your district activities, that you are continually, again, reviewing, evaluating, and reevaluating your strategic priorities. That's much more helpful than, again, something that receives board approval and then sits on a shelf. And unfortunately, I have to say that is sometimes the case with some of these districts. Some of these plans aren't utilized as well or as often as they should be. And then lastly, we just have format required. This is really probably just my predecessors being picky about about how things need to be documented or backed up at the state. But we do require the plan to be have some basic format consistency with a cover page, and certainly we do want to see a record of board approval, signatures and dates on that. Any questions on, I know I've given you a lot. Any questions so far on our process requirements or content requirements for the program? I wasn't sure if we had enough time or if it's appropriate to really take an in-depth look at any particular district strategic plan. However, I have I would like to, I guess, share for your consideration 3 of our districts who have plans that are posted on their websites that are particularly good plans, that they definitely meet all the requirements of our program and in most cases go above and beyond that. These are 3 different districts, significantly different in terms of size, resource, staffing, and geographically distributed throughout the state as well. So if you want to take the time to check out any of these, you'll notice a lot of differences in terms of capacity with the districts, but a similar format and again, similar process and content requirements as I've discussed. So I would encourage you to take a look at those if you're interested in, at least in my opinion, what are really good strategic plans for Pennsylvania districts that definitely fall within our intention for this program. That really is all I had. I wanted to again just encourage folks to reach out to me if I can provide any additional information or insight. We do have a leadership development website. Ron, I don't see you on the camera, but if Ron's camera is on, he'd be rolling his eyes at this, what I'm about to say, which is the leadership development website is always a work in progress. And whenever I get together with the committee, they're sick of hearing me say, "Oh, we're gonna revise the website." But it's not exactly it's not shameful, but it certainly is a work in progress. We've actually kind of outgrown our platform and format that when I came on board in 2018, one of my first projects was to take the website, the existing program website, which I think went up in 2009. So it had been up for about 10 years at that point, to completely redesign and revamp that as more of a event portal as well as a resource archive. And we were initially successful, but since then, kind of a victim of our own success and the resources and events and such that we put on there. We've just our website platform and design is no longer sufficient. We've outgrown it. And so when you check our website, you might see some evidence of that. But I am working on it, and hopefully here in the coming year we're gonna have at least a reorganized website. But we have it organized in a way that you can click around, you can find you can find specific programs under headings, you can find webinars, you can search by topic. You can take a look at some self-guided training modules that we've put together for orientation. There's a variety of stuff on there, an event calendar. Feel free to look around, and if you have trouble finding anything, just circle back to me. That's what our managers do, because sometimes they take more time than they wish they had looking at my website and then just give up and email me, and I can just send it directly to them. So if anyone is looking, like I said, for anything particular, feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to provide that for you.
All right, this has been so helpful, Matt, and thank you so much for framing this as well, the strategic planning within the context of the leadership program as well, because it is, one of the good signs of leadership is being able to create and implement a plan for an organization, of course. So really appreciate this information. And we do plan these coffees for half an hour, but I am curious just kind of to wrap up. If anyone has any questions for Matt, of course, feel free to pop those in the chat. Otherwise, to kind of wrap up this discussion, I'm curious if you could just share, in your experience working with the districts and across the state, what do you think some of the primary limitations are in either the training that you give through the leadership program or with the strategic planning process?
Good questions. So, one of the things that I have found is that, the benefits of strategic planning should, and I emphasize the should be self-evident. But I have found that depending on your board, the composition and makeup of your board, sometimes that's not always self-evident. Which leads me back to your question in terms of limiting factors. I much prefer to focus on strategic board development as opposed to a strategic plan. Strategic board development is a way to look at your board and assess its capacity, assess its not just its capacity to meet the current needs of your district, but the future needs. Fast forward 5 years, fast forward 10 years or 20 years. What does your board look like? If it looks the same as it does now, good for you. Hopefully, everyone has skill sets in place that are going to serve your district well in the coming years and decades. But in a more realistic way to look at that would be, what do you need that you don't have? What do you need that's going to serve you well in the future? And where do you get that? And that's where we come into what I kind of call a dirty word, the D word, which is diversity. And I know you guys at NACD have done different things to address that in a broad sense at districts across the nation. Clearly, and I'm not going to get into the inside baseball of why this is challenging. It's just that there is, needless to say, there's some political baggage connected to the word diversity that makes it sometimes a challenge to lead with that as a topic or convince people that it's even worth their time or that it's important. It's something that districts should be thinking about. And I have found that, again, if you get it, you get it. If not, you're not gonna. But that board development piece is a way to kind of sneak it in, if you will. Not to be impolitic, but if I go to a board meeting right now at a typical district, I'm going to look around and I'm going to see a group of predominantly older. Yeah, I mean, I'm again not to be impolitic or politically incorrect or whatever, but our boards are dominated by old white men. And by old, I mean in some cases 60s and 70s, retirement age or older. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And there's absolutely no point in trying to artificially inject diversity into that situation just for the sake of and that obviously is going to rub people the wrong way. What I try to do is approach it from a capacity point of view. Hey, you might have 4 farmers and 4 community members, and one of your community members, might be an insurance broker and so have some insurance background, or might work at a law office and have some legal background, might have some experience in private industry, in say an HR field or some other consulting fields. That again, that sort of adds to your board capacity. If you don't have anyone on your board that doesn't have a financial background, you're at a disadvantage. If you don't have, I would argue, not everyone would agree, but I would argue if you don't have someone on your board that doesn't have an HR or training or development background, that puts you at a disadvantage. And so strategic board development is really about assessing where you're at currently and where you think you need to be, again, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever time frame is appropriate, and looking at growing towards fulfilling that mission in the future, not just in the present. So I have found, sorry to go off on a tangent about that, but that's what I'm working on here for the upcoming year for our director trainings. I have found the strategic planning process, again, sometimes you really have to sell it. Sometimes folks already know what they want and they just kind of want to check off a box and say, yes, we did our strategic plan, put the rubber stamp on it, put it on the shelf, see you in 5 years. Other districts, you have management staff there or perhaps someone on the board who is much more engaged, realizes the importance of intentional outreach to all the different varieties, the diversity, if you will, of communities that they serve, realizes the importance of intergenerational representation. Obviously, more than one gender being represented on your board. There's lots of different ways that you can work this, and I've been trying to kind of slowly chip away at it without too much pushback. So the jury's still out on that. But again, just in a broad sense, philosophically, that's how I like to approach strategic development, not at the district level, but at the board level, at the level of board capacity. You're only as strong as your people. And if I can improve, if I can strengthen and improve and develop what you have to work with for a board, then will everything else fall into place underneath that? No, I'm not. There's so many things that are beyond our control in terms of revenue and funding streams, and the regulatory landscape, and obviously, unfortunately, politics sometimes play into this. But the best I can do is help you take care of yourself and take care of your team, and that's kind of my compass, if you will, for the program. We always try to include not just conceptual stuff, but ways to tie that directly into operations, whether that be things like emotional intelligence or time management, assertive conversations, effective communication skills, a variety of different things. We try to give the concept and then the practice. So we try to follow that through both board development and all the way down through management and staff training as well. I know I keep going on and on and on. I'm just waiting for
No, I think these are really helpful comments, Matt. And I think, your point about doing the strategic board development being equally, if not more important than the plan itself, I think is really important, because one of the things we see nationwide with a lot of our districts is just a lack of capacity, be it either at the board level, at the staff level, a lack of resources, et cetera, but being able to have a board development plan in place, or at least a strategy over the long term, inherently provides more resiliency for the district to then be able to respond to all those other factors that are outside of the district's control that you mentioned, be it the regulatory environment or these unprecedented levels of funding that we're seeing for conservation right now, that some districts are just unfortunately not able to respond to because they're not in that position to be resilient, to be able to jump for them. So
resiliency, you hit the nail on the head. That's what it's about.
Exactly. Well, on that note, you've provided a lot of really, really great information, and obviously shown the group here, as well as everyone that will watch later on YouTube, that you're an excellent resource that people can reach out to. So I want to thank you again, and this has been a fantastic dialogue. I've certainly learned a lot. So thank you for joining us. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up, since we are just a little bit past your half hour. So thank you so much again, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thanks again for having me. And again, I invite anyone to check out our website, reach out to me personally if I can be of assistance, and look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon and happy holidays.
Thanks.